Good day, everyone, and welcome to the Voice of Webster. And in this new episode, we're going to talk about Webster Media Talks from classroom to careers. And we have a really great chance to make podcast with Professor Vincent, distinguished and high-ranked top professor at Webster. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Welcome, and thanks for your agreement, of course. So before starting our journey, we wanted to hear briefly about you.
Well, it's ironic that I would be teaching media at all because I never started out at university to be involved in media. I was a musician.
Really?
Yes. I started out as a music major. I played jazz trumpet and very quickly realized, by my third year of university, realized that that was no life for a man who hoped to have a family one day, playing in smoky bars late into the night. And so about my second or third year into the university, I began to learn more about myself and decide that I wanted to do more to be able to give back. So I always had an interest in photography. I was majoring in music, and I had an interest in serving others, helping people, particularly children and families. And so in my senior year of university, my fiance, whom I met in music school, said, it sounds like if you could combine all of those things, you could really be very, very happy. And I agreed, but I said, what could I do? She said, I know somebody who does children's television. And I said, okay. And he writes his own songs. And I said, okay. And she said, I think if you talk to him, you might find a way to combine everything. Wanting to help children with music and my interest in photography.
So you combined your musician and photography skills?
Yes. And I met with the man. I thought he was going to be a little kiddie show host. You know how children's shows are. A lot of noise,
Yeah.
funny hats.
Yeah.
It turned out that he wasn't a children's show host. He was the children's show host. I didn't know about him. His name was Mr. Rogers. His name was Fred Rogers. And he didn't have just a little TV show. 15 million children a day watched this man all across the country. And that was my first visit to a television studio. That was it. I was 20 years old.
20 years old.
20 years old when I met Fred Rogers.
That's too young, but
It was
too young, but you could do more things in 20 years old.
I was
You're
20.
20 years
Yes.
Amazing.
And everything he taught me, we became friends. He became my mentor. He became my graduate advisor when I went through graduate school to study a degree that I kind of made up myself. It was the 70s. You could do that. And it was in children's television production that was educational and that involved music and that involved the arts. I was so blissfully happy, and he taught me so much more about media than I ever thought possible. Everything that I teach in media now comes from that perspective. How can it help people on the other end of the television screen to live better lives? How can they be more secure children? How can they grow into adulthood in better ways? All of those are very different questions from how can we make a lot of money in this? So I'm teaching media now, and my whole career has been in service of children and families or people who want to serve them and helping develop leaders through media. It's only been very recently that I've been teaching. So,
Wow. It was amazing history of your life.
oh, it's
To the media.
and media is such a force in all of our lives. It's so much a part of everything. It's almost the water that we swim in. Media is everywhere. We can't not be around it. I mean, you and I are both holding media devices as we talk through this medium of video. So it's just a part of our lives. It's almost like an extension of our fingers. And it's important, even more so today, that no matter what field a student enters into, they have some knowledge and understanding of media, and not just how it works, not just where the buttons are, but to understand its power for influence, and I believe power for good.
Totally. Uh, so as you mentioned it, you studied at musician school.
Mhm.
So you can sing.
No,
No,
I don't.
you can play in
I play
instruments.
I play trumpet,
Trumpet.
jazz trumpet, and it's been a long time since I've done that. And of course, if you go to a conservatory or a music school, everybody is required to learn keyboard. So I do a little bit of keyboard because you have to understand the theory of sound and the theory of music and how notes relate to one another, overtones and all of those things, in the same way that you have to understand the structure of writing or the
Mhm.
structure of international relations. It's its own language, it
Yeah.
has its own structure.
Yeah.
Of course, computer. So all discipline has the foundational structure under it, and that's a lot of what we learn at university, no matter what the major.
Totally. I agree with you. So we have one of the most asked questions.
Mhm.
Have you ever met a student at Webster who changed their major to media studies from a completely another field or from another university? If yes, did you have a chance to talk with them about why they made that decision?
Ah, interestingly, I've had more students who have come as media majors and then changed their major to something else concurrently as a double major.
Mm.
In other words, they quickly saw that media has application in the real world. The other thing that happens is that very often students come to Webster and they have a very set idea of what they want to study. And then they meet somebody who's doing something else.
Yeah.
And then they take a class in another department and they realize, "Oh, that's a great thing to study." The most common change that I've seen with students are those who come to first study media, and then they realize that international relations is really where their heart is, or at least part of their heart. And I encourage them, yes, do a double major. There's no better double major than international relations and media, or business and media, because as I said, media is all around us.
Yeah.
In the old days, when I was coming along, if you were in television, you were in television, or if you were a photographer, you were in the field of photography, and usually for many years, it was these were high entry barrier positions, meaning it took a lot of training
Yeah.
to master the cameras or to master the craft of video production or filmmaking or script writing. That's all changed.
Yeah.
You and I have in our
Yeah.
pockets a device that does all of it. It records, it takes
Yeah.
magnificent pictures, it enables us to do so many things, and that has changed the world. So now everybody is a media
No,
producer.
of course.
You know.
Everybody is journalist
Yeah.
or news articles writer. Everybody can write currently on phone. They have phone. They have internet. They
Yeah,
have access.
exactly. And the thing is, in the workplace, it's becoming more and more common for companies to hire someone in-house there who will do their media production, their PR work. No longer do they have to go out and contract with a huge production company.
Mhm.
Some do, and some need to, but most companies are looking to they're looking to somebody inside. Can you do the photos for this, or can you help us do our annual report, or help us, or can you go on television and talk about our company with? And increasingly, people are being called upon to do that, and that's why at Webster it's we have such crossover. We have so many people
Uh,
who are in other majors, but they're also studying media because it's an important part of their chosen
yeah.
profession.
Can you share your funny memories from your time teaching media at Webster here?
Mhm.
Maybe a student who surprises you, or a discussion which you remember your whole life.
Some I don't want to tell you. Some of those, but I will say what struck me first when I came from the United States to Tashkent. One of the things that surprised me is that I would share something that I had produced. For instance, in photography class, I would share a photograph of a U.S. president. I photographed Barack Obama. I photographed
Really?
Jimmy Carter. And the next question that students wanted to know is, "Do you know him?" In other words, well, yeah,
Like personally.
yeah, that's yeah, because the assumption is in the United States, if you're living in the United States, you just hang out with stars, or you live next door to Oprah, and that's just a common. I understand it because media gives that impression of being such a personal medium, and so you feel like you know these people.
Mhm.
But I always have to say, no, I spent some time with Barack Obama. I spent the day with Jimmy Carter. But no, we don't go out on his yacht together. Or, I don't eat at his house. And no,
You don't know him personally.
of course not. No, no. And he moves in different
Yeah.
worlds. Just the other day, I was sharing a podcast that I did with a man by the name of Arun Gandhi, who is the grandson of Mahatma Gandhi,
Mhm.
and we spent a few hours together. And one of the students says, "Did you know him?" And I said, "Arun Gandhi." I knew him a little bit, and I worked with him some in Washington D.C. because he's a peace activist. But she says, "No, did you know Mahatma Gandhi?"
Yeah.
Well, given that he died in the 1940s and I was not born until the 1950s, no, I did not know him. But it's a beautiful thing when you work in the world of media and you immerse yourself in the lives of other people and get to meet people like his grandson, Arun Gandhi, who spent a lot of time with it. You do get to know. You do feel like you know those people, and they kind of come to life a little bit. But that's the most unusual question that I get over and over.
Mhm.
You know, do you know Oprah? No, I don't know her.
To be honest, it's amazing that you met such kind of people, serious people. President Barack Obama.
Yeah.
You know, it means that at Webster works only professionals who has real life experience, like as you in media,
You
taking
know,
picture.
I
You
I
have experience.
That's so interesting to say because I once talked with a PhD candidate at a university in the United States whose major he was finishing up his dissertation in African studies,
Mhm.
and he had been in school a very long time. And I said, "Oh, good." I said, "Congratulations. Now, what part of Africa did you go to?" And he said, "I've never been there." And I was thinking to myself, "You mean you've never your PhD is in African studies and you've never been on the continent?" The drawback of that, of course, is that all of those experiences are secondhand
Yeah.
experiences. He's writing about somebody else's
Yeah.
experience. Sometimes that happens with religious people. They write about somebody else's religious
Yeah.
experience, or they create theology around other people's work, and it becomes removed. And the beauty of having this many years and having lived in so many arenas and worked with so many lovely, wonderful people is that it helps me to be a better teacher.
Mhm.
Um, and I honestly don't know how I could have taught at Webster if I had spent my entire life in a classroom.
Mhm.
There's something I hope that you can sense about just the world and the way the world works from just conversations that you have with people who have lived and done things that are sometimes very unusual.
Yeah, to be honest, it's becoming rare to meet person who actually has real life experience. It's currently rare because not everybody has real life experience. For example, IR professors has no real life experience. We do not encounter experienced professors in every university or every class.
And I always suggest to students, seek out those people as best you can in
Yeah.
your own community. Insist on spending time with people who are doing the kinds of things you love. And by the way, my friend and mentor, Fred Rogers, didn't know it, but he gave me one of the best pieces of advice for teaching that I ever had. And he didn't know that I would become a teacher someday. Although I've always worked in media and education,
Mhm.
but never on a university campus until fairly late in my career. But his advice was this. He said, "The best kind of teaching is when you do what you love in
Yeah.
front of other people. By the way, that's the best kind of student also.
Yeah.
A student who does what they love in class, that they, can I make that assignment into a video, or can I do that as a song or a dance? Some teachers will say, no, you have to write it. But how delightful to be able to be curious about something and then to be able to say, I want to run this through the filter of my own passion. There's nothing better. And most teachers love it.
Yeah, absolutely. So now we have to switch to another topic, to another chapter of our podcast, media studies at Webster.
Mhm.
What makes the media studies program here at Webster unique?
Well, I think I don't know that it's unique with all universities, but I do know that there is an important intentional part of the program that we have here that combines theory with practice. Um, I went to 2 universities, and one of them was a music school, and all I studied was music that year. It was all music all the time. And it was wonderful because if you ask me about Bach or Handel or Dvorak, or I could talk about it all day long. But if you ask me about um, exposing for a perfect sunset, or how do you write a perfect poem, or I had no frame of reference because I was doing all applied music training without the context, or without a sense of why that mattered. Combining theory with practice gives you the answer to that question, why. Why do I move the light where it is? Why do I have to structure this article the way why do I need an outline? Why do I begin here and then work to here and here and here, instead of just jumping in and doing it?
Yeah.
And theory, some people who do practice, who love to have their hands on the camera or on the lights, the good ones will tell you that the theory behind it really matter. So at Webster, we combine theory with practice. It's not just about how to make
Yeah.
media, it's why we make it, and how it's received, and it's in a larger context. They're both important. Absolutely.
Because we are learning something new, because we have to use it in real life, not just in papers.
I love to watch my students roll their eyes when I say, let me tell you, let's go back in time a little bit and understand. I don't know if this happened in your class, but before we understand the internet, we really need to understand the telegraph.
Yeah.
There's sparks. It started with just sparks, and understanding the telephone, and then what is a telegram? We think of telegram as on what's on our phones.
Our phones, yeah.
Oh no, it was a message made with sparks, with a machine that was hooked to a
A
battery.
lot of people think that Telegram is, like a pocket phones.
Yes,
They
yes.
still think.
And it is now.
Yeah.
But everything that we have was built upon something else.
Yeah.
And if we understand why those things were so important to society, to people, and to a culture, then we understand why they are so important to us now. If we look at our lives in a vacuum, we lose a little of the magic.
Of course.
So, I mean, there was a time when, to do this video to this interview we're doing now, the lights would have been making us sweat.
Yeah.
The cameras would have been huge. You would have had to hire 4 or 5 people, one person just for the microphone, another person to create a movie. Sometimes the cameras were as large as they were larger than what fits in our space right here. And today we can pull out our phone or a GoPro or a drone and send it up. And it's beautiful to be able to understand the context. And to understand the context, we need to understand the theory. That is the why of those things.
When I was kid, camera was kind of like this.
Yes.
Big and heavy. It was kind of really impossible to walk, to run and catch a video, make a video.
Yes.
It was really hard.
I'd like to create a course for Webster called Pocket Production.
Pocket production.
Pocket Production, where your whole production suite is in your pocket, because the phone has those things. They've got magnificent cameras
Yeah.
that even have good zooms on them
Yeah.
now, didn't used to. I mean, there are always some limitations. Um, they have the ability to stabilize themselves. We used to have to spend the hundreds of dollars a day hiring a man who wore a harness to put the camera on. This is called the Steadicam operator, and we felt lucky to have it, because before that, the camera had to be put on a dolly, what's called a moviola, that had a hydraulic arm and 4 wheels, and that required someone else on staff just to roll it back and forth. And even then it was limited, or a crane that had to. It's crazy easy now
Yeah.
to create media with just the tools in our pockets. And microphones, they're quite good. They're not perfect, but they're quite good. And you can do so much with the tools in your pocket now. And I just think I would love to be able to teach a course that uses just those tools, kind of retro.
Just mobile phone, creating something unique, better, good,
Yes.
amazing.
The amount of light that it takes,
Yeah.
that it used to take. In the old movie days, actors would be in a scene, and then they would have to go and lie down and put compresses on their eye. They would get a thing known as Klieg light, the Klieg eyes, because these extremely bright lights were always in their eyes, and it would burn their retinas. It was a hazard. We don't even think about that anymore.
Of course. What kind of subjects do students study in the media studies program, or are there unexpected or special courses?
Yes, well, again,
Yeah.
we have both theory and practice. We have EPMD, the electronic media production overview. We have film and television, basic. We have camera and light, how to master the camera, how to master the lighting. Those are very important to do together, because if you can control the light and the shadow, you can control the visual language of the film or the video. It's so much more. Film is so much more than just information acquisition. If you look at an old movie, say, I'm going to send your listeners and your viewers to a movie called Casablanca, done, I think it's 1943. It's a black and white movie that is just full of visual language. For instance, there's a scene where the actor Humphrey Bogart is in a bar, in his bar, all by himself, waiting for Ilsa, the love of his life, to come through the door at any moment. And he's wrestling with, do I do the right thing or do I do the wrong thing? The lighting director arranges the light in such a way that half of his face is in light, the other half is in shadow. And it's just the light's way of dramatizing the tension that exists within him. So we teach that as part of camera and light.
Here at Webster.
Here at Webster, we teach basic film appreciation, which delves into some of those things. Why does the camera move in instead of back? Why do you use a wide shot or a high shot instead of a close-up? How do you combine all of those together in editing, which is also one of the classes? So that's the practical side, dealing with some theory. In our MDST classes, our media studies classes, we study for instance, I teach a class called Media, Diversity, and Society, in which we explore how media helps to alter society just by the messages that it carries into the public square. So, for instance, how does media either challenge or perpetuate racism or other stereotypes? We even talk about what those stereotypes look like and what happens when you have a prejudice that people act upon. Then it becomes a discrimination. And then if those people become lawmakers or influential people in society, they can unknowingly or sometimes knowingly carry those discriminations into the fabric of our society, and that becomes a systemic injustice. So once we shine a light on that, then we can see how media plays a role in it. And in my class, I show how people used to just make stereotypical comedy routines because very often prejudice is carried from one generation to the next through comedy or making fun of other people. And when we realize what we're doing, we can say, not in my production. We're not going to keep that alive. We're going to allow people to be who they are in my productions. And that changes the fabric of society. So, yes, media studies has to do with that. The ethics of media. There's so many ways that so it isn't just media production, it's also media consumption.
So it's my understanding that university will provide with equipments like high quality cameras,
Oh, yeah.
lights.
In a perfect world, you shouldn't have to worry about those things.
Yeah.
They should be there for you. And yes, Webster has equipment for the students to use in their classes.
Yeah, that's, to be honest, amazing opportunity.
Yeah.
To show how they work
And it's also,
to create something,
yes.
to
And
become a voice.
yes, and it just gives you a chance to get your
Yeah.
hands on that camera. There's no substitute for that. We can watch videos all day long, but until you have that in your hand and you're moving the dial, oh, okay, understanding simple things. I think in passing, I mentioned the exposure triangle. Well, that's a thing. Understanding how to combine light and time and sensitivity of the film, the sensor on the camera itself to create an image. I can shoot 3 very different pictures of you right now just by altering one of those 3 things or 2 of those 3 things. It's still exposed correctly, but by moving the light or by moving the speed of the shutter. If you've ever looked at a photograph and you've seen, for instance, a waterfall in which you see every little drop just tack sharp in the picture, and then you've seen another picture of that same waterfall and it just looks like cotton or it looks like just frozen liquid. Those are just 2 different ways of adjusting the camera to get 2 very different effects on the same waterfall. So we learned that here.
Yeah, amazing. So you want to say that don't be a consumer, be a creator,
Yes.
like create something.
Yes.
Well,
And I know that the phone cameras do a great deal. I know that you can just point and shoot, boom, all day long, and you can get these expensive cameras to do the same thing. But if you really want to use your own creativity and turn your vision into something to recreate what you see in your mind, then understanding what that camera can do is everything. And that's a good bit of what we study here.
So yeah, just stop.
Okay.
So
How are we doing?
you are doing great.
Okay.
So but the battery is not.
Okay.
o'chqolibdi.
Yo'q, o'chqolmadi, lekin
Sal cho'zvordi.
8%. Yo'q, cho'zilmadi, yaxshi hammasi. Buni batareykasi sal tez ketar ekan, shunda change qilsam.
Did it stop?
No,
Oh, okay.
I will change the battery
it's changing.
and then we'll
Okay.
go on.
Great.
Qanaqa save qilibdi-da videoni.
That's it.
Zo'r. Qanaqa o'tirish kerak? Nima deb o'ylaysiz?
Zo'r.
Yaxshi ketyapti. Yeah, it's becoming really interesting.
Oh, good. I hope so. We're really lucky to be in such a beautiful field as this.
So lately, I've been seeing a lot of posts on platforms like Reddit, Twitter, and Quora, where people actually share their thoughts and their experience. Mostly, I'm currently seeing thoughts about Webster. They are saying that media studies at Webster is getting better. Some people actually saying that there is some specific aspect that's making better. So, what feature makes Webster Media Program unique?
It's all about the equipment.
Equipment.
No, I'm teasing you. It's not about the equipment. What makes a program work is when there is a strong focus, when we understand our why. Why are we here and why? And when I say we, I'm not talking about the faculty. I mean faculty and students. I'm convinced, and the older I get, the more convinced I become about this, that teaching and learning is a covenant.
Yeah.
You know what I mean by a
Yeah.
covenant? Almost a sacred agreement.
I got the point.
Yes, and that has to come both from the students and the teachers.
Yeah.
It's a mistake to think that anybody can walk into a class and sit down and say, "Okay, teach me," because it just bounces off. And with AI, it bounces off even more. I'll fix it. I'll fix it later with AI. No, 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 no. The attitude that we bring and the commitment that we bring to the classroom is really a sacred agreement between teacher and student. And that is also something that the teacher must acknowledge and bring out. I like to think that what's happening in the media department is that we're attracting committed students and that the teachers are meeting that challenge to be the best they can be by understanding that that student is there for a purpose. Now, that's what I like to think.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that everyone has a different reason, but what jazzes me the most in the classroom are when I see students really listening, not just to what's being said, but for what it means under those words and what it can mean to them. Because when they become creators, they're not going to just be saying, "Oh, let me turn back to page 17 of my notes." No, what learning does is it empowers your thinking. It enables you to ask good questions. And the best things that happen in media are those that begin with a question. What if, huh? And then so that it looks like this, can I think? Yeah. What if the show were in a coffee shop and you heard the sounds of the coffee all around, and the viewer really felt like they're part of the conversation? What if the camera were here right where you would be seated at this table? I wonder how much more intimate that conversation could be. The asking those what if questions. How do I say this? Everything that is created in this world
Mm-hmm.
is created twice.
Yeah.
It's first created here
In our mind.
in the mind and in our hearts, and then we translate that into the real world. It rarely happens the other way around.
When I was coming to the Webster, I was coming from corridor, and I saw a lot of professors from United States, from Scandinavian countries, from Sri Lanka. They are all international. I think which makes them professional, and they have maybe wider world view. What do you think about this?
I would agree that having an international perspective is a valuable thing. In the same way that we grow first as little babies in the womb of our family, and gradually you get to know the outer family, and then the community, your neighbors, and then the people in your school. And the process of growth is an outward growth. And if we stop, and although we always need that community of people for support, if we stop there, then we stop learning about the context. And one of the things that I teach in media diversity and society is cultural relativism, where what is true in one culture may not be true for another. What may be considered artistically beautiful in Europe may hold no value in Central Asia. But understanding why people do what they do, why they love what they love, why they listen to the music that they listen to, gives us a window into their world. And the more we can understand about other cultures, I think the better world citizens we can be. And by the way, that's the other reason that Webster University has such an emphasis on a program called Global Citizenship.
Mm-hmm.
Many of my students are not media majors. They are IR majors or business majors, computer, economics, but they come to this course because it is part of what's known as the Global Citizenship Program. And it's just there to open a window for you. You won't
Yes.
study this in computer class, but come look,
Totally.
come look through this. Look at what, and media majors then take courses in
Yeah.
liberal arts colleges. This is a mainstay. This is an important, and I'll have to say my very first year at a liberal arts university, I took a course that probably changed my life more than any of my music courses. It was a team-taught humanities course in which we studied for a year Japanese culture. It could have been any culture, but that year it was Japanese culture, and we studied Japanese music, literature, art, dance, food, yeah, music, all of it.
Like traditions.
Yes, it was an immersion in another culture in which the professors then gathered together on Friday afternoons with all of the students, and we had a discussion about what that meant. How was Japanese kabuki dance different from French ballet, different from American modern dance? How is Japanese music different from Western music? I sometimes despair when I walk through Tashkent City that out of one set of speakers, I hear this beautiful indigenous Uzbek music, this lovely stuff. And then as I walk out of that, I move into another part of the park where I'm listening to P. Diddy or, the rappers imported from the United States. And I want to go, no, go home, go back. Well, don't spoil this beautiful experience here. The cultural, I refer to it as cultural imperialism, where a culture imposes its values on another culture. I think they need to do this with great restraint and great respect.
Yeah.
And seeking to understand is where I believe we need to begin. What can you teach me about what we're having for dinner, for instance? What is plov? Right up until the horse meat, I was on board. And after that, I don't know. I don't know about the horse meat stuff, but I needed to know what is plov? What does it mean? What is an Uzbek wedding like? And education is part of that process.
Yeah.
And at Webster, we make it an intentional part of the process.
Have you been in wedding, an Uzbek wedding?
A wedding? Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I've been to, well, in fact, one of my students invited me to an Uzbek wedding, and it was such a beautiful moment. What my wife and I didn't know is that men and women don't dance together.
Yeah.
So we were out there, dancing man and woman together, and gently our host was kind of making me go this way and making her go that way, and then we realized, okay, this is the different kind of dance.
Yeah.
I loved it. Yeah.
So, Professor, as we all know, we are currently seeing the rapid growth of AI in social media like Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Yeah. What new skills do you think young people need to succeed in their life?
I will tell you that the number one skill, and I mean this is high above all the other AI skills, is to understand what it is and what it can do to us. And I don't mean for us. What I mean is that we need to lift the hood on AI and look at the engine and see what it's designed to do. And I can tell you it's not designed to make your life better. We talk about this in my class, Media Diversity in Society. AI is a tremendously powerful tool that is actually more powerful today than it was 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Exponentially so. And in every technology, every advance in technology, there's been this period of time when it gets out in front of the people who are developing it and the people who are using it. And always we have to sort of reach out, pull it back and say, wait a minute, there's some unintended consequences here. What's happening with AI, in my opinion, it is shot out. And I'm not sure we've reached out. I'm not sure we can reach out and pull it back and say, wait a minute. In some ways, I feel like the train has left the station. And that's sad. It's also dangerous. But I think that the most important thing we can do to train ourselves in AI is to train ourselves in what it is doing and why it is doing it. Because it is not there to make our lives better or easier or more informed. Those things all exist. It has all of that. The purpose of, and let's look at social media as an example, because social media is run by AI. It has been for a very long time. Social media's purpose is not to give us the news.
Yeah.
It is not to make us closer to the people that we're closest to. The purpose of AI is to monitor so that it can better predict our thinking and our behavior.
Yes. To prevent our thinking abilities.
Yes. And what it's designed to do is to watch you closely.
Yeah.
And then be able to predict what you like, what you don't like, whom you like, how long you look at a picture or a video, what areas of interest you have, but not so that it can say, oh, that's great, let me help you with that. It's designed so that it can better predict what you want next, and then it sells that to advertisers. They make trillions of dollars. One of the most important things we need to know is that AI is not there for us. Bertrand Russell said that if you are not paying for the product, then you are the product.
Yeah.
We are the products that AI and social media uses in order to sell that predictive model to advertisers, because advertisers want to know that if you're watching an ad and the likelihood of you buying something as a result of that is great. Therefore, in that model, truth doesn't matter. And if we want to know why there are so many little offshoot news organizations and commenters and YouTube channels and basement video production things talking about all kinds of crazy conspiracy theories, it's because fake news, and this has been studied, travels 6 times faster than the real news.
Really?
Does 6 times faster. Now, that also commands larger and larger audiences, and social media's sole function is to grab your attention, to keep your attention at whatever cost. And if that means being able to predict what you care about and then sending you down that rabbit hole, then they'll do it. And the trouble is that the rabbit hole that it sends you down may be very different from the one it's trying to send me down. And so pretty soon we're not even talking to each other. Pretty soon we think that the whole world thinks like us. And pretty soon we think that the other guy is crazy. And we've seen what happens in the United States. They become more and more polarized, to the point where there is no objective truth that is discernible. And that is checkmate.
They're kind of more divided.
Much more divided. And it happened during the first Trump administration, when he was lying to the American people, and the newscaster, I remember the night, the newscaster said, but those are not the facts. And she says, no, those are our alternate facts, which is another word for lie. I mean, but she said, these are alternate facts. When people are willing to believe that there are alternate facts, I mean, that there is truth and then there's a different truth and then we're finished, because then we have no objective sense of our shared human experience. And so I'm very concerned about the role of not just AI, but social media. The AI engine that drives social media. In terms of the modern use of AI, which at Webster very often is not just research, we have to watch carefully that it doesn't become a substitute for students' thinking. There are beautiful ways to use AI, of course. It's amazing. It's an amazing tool. But here's the rule of thumb that I always tell my students. You have reached this age and you've come to this university and you've done it with the expectation that you now are grown and you want people to hear you. You have a word to say. You have an opinion.
Yeah.
And so we want to hear that. Please, please, please don't trade that over to AI, because we already know what it thinks. It's not very smart. I mean, it does stuff really well, but it's also pretty stupid about a lot of things. Don't trade your God-given brain and your thinking and your creativity to this thing just because you want to save 5 minutes. AI can be a powerful tool for asking new questions or for imagining new things or for filling in the blanks and driving you to new areas of learning. But if you use it as a substitute for your thinking, your own power, you've just given away your power. And they could not be happier about that.
Yeah.
Because pretty soon they'll start charging you a lot for it.
Yeah.
Right now it's all free. They'll come up with a model and everyone will be dependent upon it. Addiction is the chief problem that we're having with social media and with smartphones in general.
Yeah.
There is a researcher by the name of Jonathan Haidt who has done quite a bit of research into smartphones and what it's doing to particularly young girls. Everybody is affected, but young girls are affected disproportionately. They found that between around 2009, 10, and now that the suicide rates, that the depression rates, they were kind of like this. It wasn't a great trajectory to begin with, and then all of a sudden it shot up. And we have young people who don't want to live any longer because they didn't get enough likes on their post, or they can't hope to look as perfect and as beautiful as some AI image, and who can?
Yeah.
I'd love to have, perfect George Clooney hair, and it's not gonna happen, and I'm not gonna jump off a bridge just because, but there are young people who believe it's all over. And his suggestion is, do not put a smartphone in the hands of a human being until they're at least 16 years old, and later if possible. And I find that fascinating. What I tell my students is do everything you need to do everything you can to stand guard at the door of your mind, because your brain is about a 5 million year old hardware package.
Of course.
And we are hardwired to live in small communities and to believe the things from those around us. But when you enter into social media with AI, it's not a fair fight. You cannot hope to win the attention battle between AI and all of these computers around the world that know you better than you know yourself. Boom, boom, boom. I know what he likes. Look, he looked at that picture 5 seconds longer. He loves landscapes, or he loves so all of a sudden, everything I get is to get me to look at that same site all over again. Instagram.
Yeah.
Have you ever been seduced?
Yeah. Scrolling.
Oh, that's good.
You'll bet 1 and 2 hours.
And it's crazy. Here's what I tell people to do. Use it like a tool. This is a pad that does not attach to the internet. It just lets me write. That's all it does. I read on it. I write on it. That matters because all of our other devices are there to distract us.
Yeah.
It wants our attention, and it's not going to give up easily, and what we get in return is depressed. We have to stand guard at the door of our minds. And so that's a very long answer to your question about what can we do. We need to become the masters of our own minds.
Yeah.
And we do that by just saying no, flip it over.
But it's hard.
It's so hard that I have to remind my class. I say, okay, everybody flip your phones over, and boom. And within a minute and a half, I've got 3 people going, and then leaving class and then coming back. I probably shouldn't say that because administration will say, you're letting them do what? And I don't let them, but it's such a compelling addiction. One day in a couple of my classes, I just had everybody put their phones on the shelf as they walked in the room, flipped over. And there were 2 students in one particular class, couldn't do it. They had to get up and grab it. It would go, and then boom, they had to grab it. It's just, it's a real thing.
Yeah, of course.
It's addiction. And it is important to know that just because everyone is doing it does not make it healthy for us. I've been to restaurants where I've seen little 2-year-olds doing this.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I saw a video. It was in one of Jonathan Haidt's lectures, in which there was a child in a hospital who was psychiatric too, with mental disorders, and lying on his side doing this into the air. He did not know how to fall asleep without doing this, and that is that's horrific.
Yeah.
for a society. Yeah. Educated people know how to put this thing down. I keep telling my students this, that you know how to put it down and use it as a tool. Steve Jobs once said that a computer is a bicycle for the mind.
Yeah.
And what he meant by that is that, it gets you places that you couldn't have gone otherwise. But a bicycle, and I heard Tristan Harris say this, I'll tell you about him in a moment. He said, but a bicycle doesn't come over to you at night and wake you up and start ringing its own bell and telling you that it wants to go for a ride. It doesn't do any of that. It sits there until you decide to use it. These devices that we have are all making demands on us all the time. So the first thing we can do is turn off all of our notifications, except those very most important ones. Family, I need you right now, or something. Those notifications are all adjustable, but they all default to the on switch. And just go through your notifications, turn them all off, unless you absolutely need it on. That is a start. The other thing is just to, I have a good friend who is a professor at Duke University who will not answer my texts no matter what. And the reason it's because he picks up his phone twice a day, once in the morning, once in the evening.
That's it.
That's it. He leaves it. He leaves it. And if he has to use it on a trip or something, yeah, maybe. But all of his notifications are off, and he does not allow it to. The idea that the devices are there for us to serve is very foreign. But we've been dealing with it for a very long time. When the telephone first came out, 100 plus years ago, when the phone rang, people rushed to it because they figured it must be something important. We don't do that anymore because we all have answering things. But when it comes to diddly-doo, that we go, oh yeah, yeah, and boom, you're back in, you're hooked. Let me recommend a movie. I think you may have had it in your class already. It's called Social Dilemma. It was produced as a Netflix film, and it explains what's actually happening under the hood in social media. And it is all AI driven, and it's just flat dangerous if we allow it to run us.
So we can learn something from this movie.
Yes, absolutely.
So what do you think? What's your personal forecast as a media expert? How will media develop in next 10 years?
I wish I had if I were a doctor, I would say pull the plug. If I were a doctor, I would say pull the plug on media. And isn't that terrible? Because I'm a child of media and I teach it. But I do believe that the most important, and this again, I learned from Fred Rogers, the most important part of a program is what happens when it's over. What does it help us to do? What's next? So, and I remember we would be sitting in a restaurant and parents would come up and they'd say, oh, Mr. Rogers, we love your show. My children, they love your show so much. He never said, thank you. Would you like an autograph? I mean, he wasn't that way. He always said, I'm so glad that you could use it. He always saw that program as a tool. And I asked him one time the most important part of the show, which was at the beginning or the neighborhood of make-believe, or was at the end? And he goes, no, the most important part is what a child does with those ideas after the show goes off. And he believed that it did need to be turned off. And I do too. I think we need to, I mean, it's around us. It's like water to a fish.
Yeah.
But we need to understand that our brains are not designed for this. We need to unplug and close our eyes, have quiet time, and allow the nourishing things that we let in to truly nourish us. And I think that it's up to us to say no to all of the distractions, unless you just have to be distracted and we all do. We watch movies to get away from things from time to time, but it has never been at the scale that it is now. And I think that's the superpower that we have as human beings, is being able to say, no, not today, or not tonight. I'm going to be with my grandmother tonight. Or my little brother hasn't seen me in 2 weeks. I've been so on this. No, this is his time. we have to be intentional about it. But we have that superpower.
Yeah,
can
we
be-
have. Yeah.
So media in 10 years, I shudder to think. I hope that we control it instead of allowing it to control us.
Rapidly changing.
Yeah.
Amazing. So we have a new chapter, closing and fun questions to you. What's the best piece of advice you have for students in entering to the media world?
Turn it off. I really mean that. I really mean it. I don't mean that you can't watch it or use it, but don't let it use you, because that's the current climate of media right now. It is there to use us, and we have the choice. So I really do mean the best thing you can do is to decide what you'll take in, just like nutrition. You can just take in everything, and
Yeah.
sooner or later you'll be sick.
Yeah, of
Or
course.
you can decide carefully what I want to be and who I want to be and what kinds of things support that. And then it's just a matter of pushing everything else. And my wife has a favorite gesture she uses when things become just too much. She just does this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the cue for me to go, when I see her do this, she says, no, I'm just not going to let that in. When she does this, and her favorite thing to do is to sit at the talking shop with students
Really?
and listen to what they have to say.
Talking with
Yes.
young people.
Yes.
Why?
Because she learns so much from them.
Like new, how to say, technology or what? Knowledge.
You know what
Using mobile phones like,
No. She learns what they're thinking inside. She met a student who loves poetry, and she encouraged her to continue writing her poetry. Send me more of your poetry. And the student did. And now the student is, she's talking about writing a book, poetry. No, my wife teaches me that the most important moments in life are those quiet human moments. And I get tied into the distractions. I like to find out how things work. I would tear apart a vacuum cleaner just to see how it's made. And she is an emotional archaeologist. She loves to see and to understand why people are the way they are, how they think, how they feel. She feels on a really deep level, and so she connects at that level with young people, and she loves it. And she's also very wise. She's probably the wisest person that I know. She didn't pee back to myself more than once a day. So,
what about you?
what are my favorite
Yeah.
things? I try to find the beauty in everything, in people and in expressions. I think one of the reasons I chose music and art as subjects to study and to share are because those are those kind of secondary forms of expression that can tell you more about a human being than what they say or what appears on the surface. Something that Fred Rogers told me one time, I'll share this with you. He was on stage with one of the presidents of the United States, and he was receiving a medal of honor. And afterwards, I saw it on television, and I called him later and I said, Fred, I saw you with the president of the US at the White House. I said, that must have been a thrill. And he says, it's always fascinating to be at a thing like that. And I knew he was thinking at a deeper level all of a sudden. And I said, but what would it feel like just to be with the president and with the two or three other high-level people receiving awards? And he said, Vince, the older I get, the more I realize that the truly important moments in life never happen in the spotlight. He said they always happen out of the spotlight, in the wings, where very few people are noticing. And I thought, that sounds so much like Fred Rogers. And I said, give me an example. And he says, in a quiet moment, when someone decides that they're going to forgive somebody else of a deep hurt, or someone who just needs to be listened to, and someone else gives them that moment of undivided attention, He says, that's where life's most important moments are. He says, it's not on stage with all the lights. And he was in the public eye a lot, but I also noticed when we were together, he did very simple, caring, human things. One day we were walking to a restaurant, and we were walking down a residential street. Everybody knew, of course, who this guy was, and especially in the town where he lived, because he was a national figure, and later Tom Hanks would play him in a movie. I mean, it was just, so we were walking down the street and on our way to a restaurant, and I looked down and I noticed a little baby pacifier. You know what I mean? The little blue pacifier. And I noticed it, and I stepped over it and kept walking. Rogers stopped, and he picked it up, and he looked at it like this, and he goes, I'll bet somebody really misses this right now.
Yeah.
And the next thing I knew, he's walking up the sidewalk to the house that we're in front of, we were standing, knocking on the door. And a woman came to the door, and of course she recognized him. She goes, Mr. Rogers? He says, yes. He says, I found this outside your house on the sidewalk. He said, do you know who it belongs to? And she goes, oh, that's my son's. We just came in, and he must have dropped it. He said, she says, he's taking a nap right now. And he says, well, good. I'm glad we found it. Would you give it to him? Because I know he'll want it when he wakes up. And she said, thank you, Mr. Rogers. And then he left, and we went on to the restaurant. And I was sort of speechless, because I thought, one of the busiest men that I knew and most important communicators in American television. And he stops and picks up something, and he's thinking about a child that he'll never meet. But he cared enough about that child to give him what he knew he would need. I mean, a baby, to what he needed in that moment. And that's when I realized that he lived what he taught, that the most important moments are out of the spotlight, and they're out of media. And it's not about ego, it's about love. And if there's anything that can happen when we turn off that media, it's that moment when we replace all that time that it wants to take from us in listening to somebody or paying attention to someone who hasn't been paid attention to in a long time, and just giving others what they most need that we have to give. I don't know that there's anything better.
Was an amazing story.
Oh.
Mr. Rogers was, I think, really, really, really kind person. And you described me this story, and I saw on him the real human nature.
Yeah.
I think we have to have such kind of people in today, in modern life,
Oh, yeah.
modern day.
He would end his
Mhm.
program each day by saying, you make each day a special day by just you being you. There's only one person in the whole world like you, and people like you just the way you are. That's how he ended his show
We need people like this.
Yeah, we do.
We need,
And media needs people like that.
of course.
If one Webster student decides to turn their full-time attention to that kind of communication, I think people would gravitate toward that person as if to a holy mountain. I really do. Because we do need that. We need it so badly. And that person's out there.
Yeah.
And it may be more than one Webster student.
So, if you could invite any media legend for a cup of tea, who would it be, and for what?
Well, gosh, we've been talking about the one person that I would invite. We've had a lot of cups of tea, and I wish he were here. He died in 2001, and I wish he were still with us. I would invite him. But it's funny, sometimes I think about what would make the perfect dinner party. Who could I invite to the perfect dinner party? And if I had 8 chairs, I would have 7 empty chairs. Who would I invite? Would it be Johann Sebastian Bach and Mahatma Gandhi and Thomas Jefferson, Alicia Navoy? Who would make the combination through time and space and make that and what would that conversation be like? And I still think about that. And sometimes the chairs change, and what woman in history can help to bring energy to that table? What child could help bring energy to what would that dinner just be like? And I don't have an answer to that, but I'd like to think about it.
Yep.
And maybe AI can help me put that together. But
It's hard to answer, I know.
yeah, and
Newbie helped.
and maybe someone will. And that's also the value of education.
Yeah.
Because the more you learn about a person throughout history, you begin to think, oh, I'd love to have that person. I'd love to sit down with that person and just know what they were thinking. I would love to see Johann Sebastian Bach and Claude Debussy, two composers from two different eras, to talk with each other. But wouldn't it be fun to have Michelangelo in that conversation too, and say, "Oh yeah." It's just fun to think about.
Yeah.
I don't have one person, but except for Fred, I miss Fred a lot.
Okay, Professor, it was really nice conversation with you. I hope it's gonna be really interesting and enjoying video podcast to our audience. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having. I enjoyed it very much. Thanks.